All right, let's take a trip back in time. We're going back 400 years to talk about a flower. But I promise you this is not a gardening show. This is the story of the world's first great financial bubble, and it is way more relevant to our lives today than you could possibly imagine.
And hey, if you don't believe me, just look at this. On the left, a single tulip bulb from 1637. On the right, a digital ape NFT from 2021. At their peak, both were worth as much as a house. Both were driven by status, by hype, and pure speculation. It's just wild. It shows that while our technology changes like crazy, human psychology, yeah, that pretty much stays the same.
So to really get how a flower could be worth a fortune, you have to go to Amsterdam in the Dutch Golden Age. And you got to understand, this wasn't just some city. This was the city. It was the wealthiest, most innovative commercial hub on the entire planet. Spices, silk, silver, all the world's riches were flowing through these canals, creating this incredible, unprecedented wealth.
Now, all this new money created a kind of funny problem. See, the Dutch were pretty serious Calvinists, and they believed that flaunting your wealth was a huge sin. So, how do you show everyone you've made it? Well, you buy tulips. They were these exotic, mysterious imports from the Ottoman Empire. And get this, the most prized ones, the so-called broken bulbs with these incredible flame-like patterns, were actually diseased. A virus caused the patterns. They were rare, they were beautiful, and they were the perfect, subtle way to signal you had arrived.
Okay, so this brings us to the story you've probably heard. The legend of an entire nation just losing its collective mind over flower bulbs.
At the absolute height of the madness, a single bulb of the legendary Semper Augustus variety was said to have sold for 6,000 guilders. Now that's a staggering number, right? But what does it actually mean?
Well, it means this. A single flower bulb, something you literally stick in the dirt, was worth more than a skilled craftsman would earn in almost 25 years. People were supposedly trading their homes, their life savings, absolutely everything for the promise of a flower.
And the legend is packed with these unbelievable anecdotes, like this one. The story goes that a sailor accidentally ate a bulb worth a mansion and got tossed in jail for it. I mean, it's the perfect story to show the supposed insanity of the time. A plant becoming more valuable than a person's freedom.
It's a fantastic story, a perfect cautionary tale. But here's the twist. That story about the sailor and, well, a huge chunk of the legend itself, it's pretty much all made up.
So if the legend we all know isn't true, then what really happened? It's time to play detective and look at the actual evidence.
This is the big question, right? Did this flower craze actually bring the most powerful economy in the world to its knees, just like the legend says?
You know, when you actually dig into the Dutch archives, the whole epic story just completely falls apart. The myth says there was this nationwide collapse, but the stock price of the Dutch East India Company, which was like the Google or Apple of its day, barely even flinched. The myth says everyone was ruined, but historians have found fewer than 40 court cases related to the whole crash. The truth is, the Dutch Golden Age didn't even slow down.
So, okay, if it wasn't a national economic disaster, what in the world was it? Well, the real story is actually way less dramatic and honestly a lot more interesting. It was a crash in a brand new, super sophisticated, and totally unregulated financial market.
See, the Dutch had basically just invented the modern stock market, and they started applying that same financial wizardry to tulips. They created what we now call a futures market. The key thing is, you weren't trading actual bulbs, you were trading paper contracts that gave you the right to buy a bulb later in the spring.
And here's how it worked. During the winter, with all the bulbs frozen in the ground, merchants would gather in taverns and start trading these paper contracts. A single contract might get traded 5, 6, 7 times, with the price jumping up each time before a single flower ever even bloomed. People weren't buying a bulb, they were buying a bet that some greater fool would pay even more for the contract tomorrow. Sound familiar? The whole house of cards came tumbling down in the spring when the contracts were due. Everyone suddenly realized they didn't actually want to own a ridiculously expensive flower. They just wanted the paper profits. And the moment that belief vanished, poof, the market just evaporated overnight.
So, and this is the really crucial point, who actually got hurt here? It wasn't the entire nation, it wasn't your average person on the street. No, it was a pretty small group of wealthy merchants and speculators, basically playing a high-stakes game in taverns, mostly with money they could afford to lose. The real economy, the one built on actual shipping and trade, it barely even noticed the crash. It's kind of like a niche crypto coin imploding today while the rest of the stock market just keeps chugging along.
Which leads us to the real mystery. If the actual event was so small, so contained, why on earth has it been remembered as this epic, nation-destroying catastrophe? Why did the myth become so much more powerful than the reality?
Well, it's because the story was just too good not to use. Over the centuries, each generation twisted it for their own purposes. In the 1700s, writers used it to mock religious people as being gullible and irrational. Then in the 1800s, it became this great cautionary tale about the dangers of finance. By the 20th century, it was completely disconnected from history and had become this perfect, timeless parable about human foolishness.
And the story survives because it perfectly captures the timeless, universal psychology of a speculative bubble. You've got social proof. Hey, all the smart rich merchants are doing it, so it must be safe. You've got FOMO. Oh my gosh, my neighbor just made a fortune. I have to get in before it's too late. And most important of all, you have the narrative, that dangerous little voice that whispers, "This time is different."
Just listen to how we rationalize it. I mean, the language is practically identical across 4 centuries. Back then, they weren't gambling on flowers. No, they were investing in rare botanical specimens. Today, people will tell you it's not just a JPG, it's the future of digital art. We tell ourselves the exact same stories to justify the exact same speculative fever. And this brings us to the most important takeaway of all. The real Dutch economy, the one built on ships and trade and real stuff, the foundation, it survived just fine. It was the speculators, the ones who confused paper profits with real value, who got wiped out. The lesson isn't that risk is bad. It's that you should never, ever mistake the casino for the actual economy.
So that leaves us with one final question. This psychology, the fear of missing out, the pull of the crowd, that seductive belief that this time is different, it's hardwired into all of us. The assets change, from tulips to tech stocks to crypto, but the human pattern repeats. So take a look around and ask yourself, what's your tulip?